You're not on the list. The words dropped like bricks, sharp, flat, and loud enough to stop the whole line behind her. Everyone turned. Everyone stared. Cameras didn't need to flash. The humiliation was instant. 17-year-old Aaliyah James stood frozen at the base of the red carpet arch outside Grand Ridge High's gymnasium. She looked perfect. Midnight blue dress. Curls pinned to one side. Heels she could barely walk in. Her ticket, printed, confirmed, and folded in her clutch, trembled in her fingers. The white woman at the check-in table, PTA vice president, overly tanned, perfectly polished, didn't blink. She just stared with tight lips and a smile that wasn't one. "This event is for enrolled seniors," the woman said, loud enough for others to hear. "Only official students." "I am one," Aaliyah said softly. "I've been here since 9th grade." "Not according to our master list," the woman replied, holding up a clipboard like it was the Constitution. "I suggest you step aside." The security guard standing nearby shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. Behind Aaliyah, students began whispering. Laughing. A few phones came out, no one said anything, but the moment was already becoming content. And still, Aaliyah didn't move. Not because she didn't want to cry, but because she couldn't believe how unsurprised she felt. Before we go deeper into this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever been told, without proof, without cause, without hesitation, that you don't belong somewhere you've worked for, earned, or dreamed of? Have you ever stood at the edge of a night that was supposed to be unforgettable, and been told, you're not on the list? If you've ever been judged before being seen, excluded before being heard, then stay with me. Because what happened next? It wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't revenge. It was something far better. Aaliyah didn't argue. She simply stepped back. Not down. Not defeated. But quiet. Measured. She pulled out her phone and called one person. "Mom," she said, voice low. "It's happening again." There was a pause. Then on the other end, "Where are you?" "Front entrance." "I'm on my way." 5 minutes later, a black Escalade pulled into the loading lane like a presidential motorcade. The door swung open, and out stepped Danica James, Aaliyah's mother. 6 feet tall in heels, crisp white blazer, not a single hair out of place. She didn't scream. She didn't ask what happened. She walked straight to the PTA woman still holding her clipboard like a weapon. "Is there a problem?" Danica asked. The woman raised her eyebrows. "This is a private school event, and I'm afraid your daughter." "She's been a student here for 4 years, Danica interrupted. "Then I suggest you take it up with the administration." "Oh," Danica smiled, ice behind her teeth. "Don't worry. I am." She turned, reached into her clutch, and pulled out something the woman hadn't expected. A contract. Stamped. Signed. Embossed. At the top. Purchase agreement, Grand Ridge Preparatory Facility Grounds and Infrastructure. The woman blinked. "What is this?" Danica smiled wider. "It's the agreement your board signed last week when they quietly accepted my firm's buyout offer for this building." Another pause. Then, "I'm sorry, I don't." "You don't have to understand it," Danica said, holding the document higher. "But you do have to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say." She turned to face the growing crowd of parents, students, and staff, some still clutching phones, some suddenly realizing something big was happening. "I'm Danica James," she said, voice steady and clear. "Founder of James Equity. My company owns the land this school is sitting on. Every brick, every hallway, every basketball court you think belongs to you. It belongs to me now." Gasps. Actual gasps. "And starting tonight," she continued, "we will be rewriting a few things around here. starting with who gets told they don't belong. She turned back to the PTA woman. My daughter is going to prom. Then she looked toward the security guard. Let her in. He stepped back without a word. Aaliyah, still shaking slightly, walked past the stunned gatekeeper and into the building, her mother's footsteps behind her like thunder. No one stopped her. No one dared. By the time Aaliyah stepped inside the gym, the music had stopped. Only for a second. But it was long enough. Long enough for people to realize something had happened. Whispers swept across the decorated hall like wind through trees. Couples in tuxes and gowns parted like velvet waves. The girl who'd just been denied entry was now walking in, not with an apology, but with purpose. With her mother beside her. Danica didn't stop to explain. She didn't need to. She walked Aaliyah to the photo area, adjusted her daughter's curls, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You still get to have your moment." Then she turned around and walked back out the door. Meanwhile, 3 stories above the gymnasium, inside a private staff lounge, 5 members of the Grand Ridge School Board were locked in a panic meeting. She can't just waltz in and say she owns the building. She didn't waltz in. She brought legal documentation. This has to be a bluff. It's not. I just called Walter at City Records. The property's in escrow. It's her holding company. Then why didn't we know? The room went silent. Because the answer was obvious. Because they didn't check who was behind the offer. The name James Equity had sounded safe. Corporate. Anonymous. They'd assumed it was a developer or a passive investment fund looking for tax shelter. They hadn't imagined it was her. And that was the problem. Danica James had learned years ago how to move through spaces without being seen, until it was time to be remembered. She didn't always dress like power. She didn't always walk with an entourage. She didn't need the spotlight. She only needed the signature. The one that gave her control. And the one thing Grand Ridge hated more than protest, was control it didn't see coming. That night, as Aaliyah danced under golden lights and pastel balloons, her mother sat in a quiet office just a block away, reading through the school's disciplinary archives. It wasn't a small folder. It was a file cabinet. Years' worth of behavior warnings, dress code violations, suspicion reports. Danica didn't have to dig far to find the pattern. Students of color made up 22% of the school population. But they accounted for over 61% of all behavioral citations. And more than 70% of those had never been reviewed by a panel, only signed off by a single administrator. The same administrator who had accidentally erased Aaliyah's name from the prom eligibility list. Danica highlighted that name, Principal Lyndon Caro. Then she picked up the phone. "Hi, yes," she said. "Schedule a mandatory staff-wide meeting for Monday morning. Full attendance. No exceptions." Pause. "Yes," she added. "I'll be delivering some policy changes myself." Back at the school, parents began to gather in quiet clusters near the gym doors. Some were whispering. Others were furious. She bought the school? This is an overreach. She's using her daughter to make a political statement. This was supposed to be about the students, not some power trip. The principal tried to regain control of the narrative. He stood near the doors, straightened his tie, and tried to look like someone still in charge. But it was too late. Danica hadn't just walked through the front door. She'd stepped over every line they thought was there to keep her out. And now, they were scrambling for ground that was already gone. A few hours later, Aaliyah came home and found her mother sitting at the kitchen island, sipping tea like nothing had happened. "You didn't have to do all that," Aaliyah said quietly. Danica looked up. "You think I did it for the cameras?" Aaliyah shook her head. "No." "Good," Danica said. "Because I didn't do it for a moment. I did it for every hallway they never let you walk down without watching you. For every lunch period where you sat alone because your hair was too different. For every time a teacher called you articulate like it was a compliment. She stood up slowly. This wasn't just about a dance, baby. This was about the floor you were never supposed to stand on. Monday morning at Grand Ridge didn't start with the bell. It started with a silence so thick the halls felt padded. Staff whispered in clusters. The PTA group chat had exploded overnight. Someone had leaked the footage from prom night, the moment Danica James pulled out that property contract, and now half the city was watching. At 8 a.m. sharp, every faculty member filed into the school auditorium. Required attendance. Mandatory. No agenda sent. That made everyone nervous. Then Danica walked in. Not in a suit this time. In jeans, flats, and a simple black blouse. No theatrics. No flash. Just presence. She stepped up to the mic, glanced once at the principal sitting in the front row, and began. "Good morning," she said calmly. "As of Friday, my firm officially completed the purchase of the Grand Ridge facility, property, and campus leasing rights." Murmurs. Shifting in seats. That includes the gym, the fields, the east and west wings, and all staff usage contracts. In short, if you teach here, you work in a space I now manage. A man in the back raised his hand. Why would a real estate firm buy a school campus? Danica smiled. There's the twist, she said. James Equity isn't just a real estate firm. It's a network of education and social impact investments. In this school? She looked around. It's going to be the first flagship in our pilot transformation program. Now the murmurs weren't whispers. They were panic. Danica continued. Starting today, Grand Ridge will undergo a full equity audit. Every policy. Every rule. Every punishment record. If your practices have upheld bias, disproportionate discipline, or exclusionary systems, you'll be retrained, reassigned, or removed. Principal Caro stood. You can't just walk in and dictate how we educate. Correction, Danica said smoothly. I'm not dictating. I'm dismantling. Then rebuilding. He started to speak again, but she held up a hand. This is the part you'll want to hear. She pulled a folder from her bag and opened it on the podium. Here are 6 formal complaints against you, Mr. Caro. From both students and staff. 1 for using the term gang colors to describe a student's red hoodie. 1 for disproportionately suspending students of color for noncompliance. 1 for publicly questioning whether a scholarship recipient had really written their own essay. She looked up. All of these were buried. All of them are now active. He went pale. Effective immediately, your contract is under review. You'll be on administrative leave while we investigate. Gasps echoed across the room. But that's... You're entitled to due process, Danica cut in. Just like the students you denied it to. She let the room settle. Then, for those of you who are here for the students, really here, I want to make one thing clear, I'm not your enemy. But I will be your accountability. After the meeting, half the staff sat in stunned silence. A few sent in resignation letters by lunch. But others? They stayed. They stepped up. They came to Danica's office with notes, stories, quiet confessions they'd been too scared to share before. One teacher, a young science instructor named Claire, placed a folder on Danica's desk. I've been tracking grading discrepancies across departments, she said. This isn't just culture. It's data. Danica opened the folder. It was all there. Students of color regularly received lower subjective marks, participation, attitude, effort, even when their test scores were identical. It was the proof no one had asked for. And now, it was on her desk. But the real twist came 2 days later. Danica walked into a classroom in the unused West Wing, once shuttered for renovation, and found a group of students sitting on the floor with notebooks. Aaliyah was among them. What's going on? Danica asked gently. Aaliyah stood. It's a study group. Kind of. Danica raised an eyebrow. Aaliyah smiled. We're building a new student code of conduct. Danica blinked. You're what? You said if they won't include us in the system, we should write one ourselves. Danica felt her throat tighten. Not because she was surprised. Because she was proud. Later that night, she added a line to her private mission journal, the one she hadn't shown anyone yet. They thought I came here to tear something down. But I came to plant something bigger. The town meeting wasn't supposed to be a battleground. But that's what it had become. The folding chairs inside the Grand Ridge Civic Hall were packed shoulder to shoulder, a wall of murmurs and side eyes. Parents in blazers. Teachers in protest colors. Local reporters hunched over notepads. Everyone had come to hear what Danica James was really planning, and some came to stop her before she even started. At the center of it all, standing behind the podium, Danica adjusted the mic and took a breath. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, she said, voice calm but clear. We're not here to cancel tradition. We're here to confront what that tradition left out. Someone in the back laughed under their breath. Louder than it needed to be. Danica didn't flinch. Let me tell you what I've found in the last 3 weeks, she continued. Grading discrepancies based on race. Suspension patterns that target the same students over and over. Rules that punish cultural expression. A culture where a student can be turned away from a celebration she earned, not because of her record, but because of her reflection. Now the room stirred louder. The microphone picked up a hiss of a whisper. Here comes the race card. Danica looked out across the crowd, eyes locking with a white woman in a pearl necklace, clearly the one who said it. The woman leaned back, smug. Danica didn't blink. You want to call it a race card, she said. Fine. But I've got 200 report cards to back it up. Then she turned to the screen beside her and clicked the remote. Up popped a chart, test scores versus participation grades, broken down by race. Then a list of dress code violations, and the types of students most penalized. Then anonymous staff comments from the audit. Student is aggressive. Loud. Talks back. Too much attitude. All describing students of color. Almost word for word. Over and over. You don't have a student behavior problem, Danica said. You have a perception problem. That's when someone stood. A man in a suit. Tall. Gray temples. A deep voice full of performative outrage. Ms. James, no one is arguing against fairness. But your changes are disruptive. They're alienating teachers, parents. Some feel their voices aren't being heard. Danica nodded slowly. You want your voices heard? She stepped back from the mic. Then let the students speak. From the side door of the room, Aaliyah stepped forward, in jeans, sneakers, and a borrowed blazer that didn't quite fit. She was holding a folder, handwritten, printed pages, highlighted margins. Behind her came 5 other students, black, white, Latinx, Asian, queer, athletes, artists. Different worlds, same mission. Aaliyah walked to the front of the room, cleared her throat, and opened the folder. We created a new student code of conduct, she said. Written by the ones who actually live under it. She looked at Danica. Danica gave a small, quiet nod. Aaliyah continued. It's based on 4 principles: fairness, dignity, community, and accountability. Every rule has to serve all 4, or it doesn't belong. She read out highlights. No more hair policing. Braids, locks, afros, wraps, all allowed. Restorative discipline first. One mistake won't end a transcript. Mental health days, real ones, that don't require parental shame. Teacher reviews, from students. Anonymous. Measured. Honest. By the time she reached the last page, the room had fallen silent. No shouting. No coughing. No smug remarks. Just breath. Stillness. Because what she said next hit deeper than policy. My name is Aaliyah James, she said. I was told I didn't belong at my own prom. that I wasn't on the list. But tonight, I'm standing here not as someone asking for a seat, but as someone building a better table." She closed the folder. "And whether you accept it or not, the students are already sitting down." A pause. Then, slowly, a few parents began to clap. Then a few more. Then the room erupted. Not everyone clapped. But no one could ignore it. The truth had been spoken. By a student. On her own terms. After the meeting, the pearl-wearing woman from earlier brushed past Danica, muttering, "We'll see how long this lasts." Danica smiled, stepped closer, and said quietly, "Longer than your discomfort." That night, as she drove home with Aaliyah in the passenger seat, Danica kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on her daughter's folder. "You were incredible," she said. Aaliyah looked out the window. "I was terrified." Danica smiled. "Good. That means it mattered." 2 weeks later, the school board voted on the new student code of conduct. It wasn't a unanimous decision. It wasn't even civil. But it passed. By one vote. And just like that, the rules were rewritten, not behind closed doors, but in public. Not in silence, but in the voice of a girl they once tried to erase. On the last day of the school year, Aaliyah walked the halls of Grand Ridge like she was seeing it for the first time. Not because the walls had changed, but because she had. She passed the trophy case, now featuring a new plaque donated by Danica's company. It read, "For every student who was told they didn't belong, we see you now." She passed the old vice principal's office, now empty. And then she walked into the auditorium, where the school's senior awards ceremony was underway. At first, no one noticed her. Then they did. Not because she made noise. Because she made history. When her name was called, Aaliyah James, Outstanding Citizenship Award, she stepped on stage to a standing ovation. The same students who once whispered. The same teachers who once overlooked her. And at the back of the room, standing with quiet pride, was Danica. Watching her daughter do what she came to make possible. Not stand in someone else's spotlight. But build her own. After the ceremony, a former administrator approached Danica in the hallway. He tried to be polite. Tried to rebrand the past as a misunderstanding. Danica let him speak. Then she smiled, not warmly, but truthfully. "Let me be clear," she said. "I didn't buy this school to feel powerful. I bought it to stop watching kids like mine get silenced." He nodded, stiffly. "Well, whatever your reasons, you certainly made an impact." She leaned in just slightly. "Not an impact," she said. "A blueprint." That night, at home, Danica and Aaliyah sat on the back porch, drinking iced tea under a quiet sky. No cameras. No speeches. Just mother and daughter. Just peace. "You really think it'll last?" Aaliyah asked. Danica thought for a moment. "Not if we wait for others to protect it," she said. "But if we teach others how to carry it. Yeah. It'll last." And now I want to speak directly to you, wherever you're watching this. Whether you've been passed over, locked out, or told you weren't good enough, not because of what you did, but because of how you look, how you speak, how you live. Have you ever stood at a door and been told you weren't on the list? Have you ever been made to feel small before you had the chance to prove your worth? If so, hear this. You don't need their permission to belong. You don't need their system to validate you. You don't need their clipboard to tell you who you are. Because what Danica did that day wasn't just buy a building. She bought a narrative. She flipped the script. She showed her daughter that the list was never the measure. And she taught a school and a town what equity really looks like. You don't have to be a billionaire to make change. You just need to know what you're worth and be willing to bet on yourself. So if this story hit you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who's ever been told they don't belong. And subscribe if you believe stories like this shouldn't just be told, they should be remembered. Because next time they say, "You're not on the list," you'll smile. And say, That's because I wrote my own.